Good morning. This is Dr. Scott Lively. It's April 7th, and here on the farm, got the campfire going. Chickens are out and about. A bit overcast today. Going to rain a little bit later. I've been working on the gardens, vegetable gardens and flower gardens, and yesterday, actually Sunday morning, drove out to Lexington, Tennessee, and picked up two females and a male meat rabbits. We're going to start breeding rabbits for food here. Doing carpentry projects. It's been very, very busy ever since the weather got better, and I haven't been able to do as many of the commentaries as I like to, but we did launch on Sunday Breaking News Bible Study. Pastor Richard May and I, he from the radio station WETR in Knoxville, and me from my studio over there. And actually the sound quality isn't very good in there yet. I'm going to have to put some sound absorbing material so it doesn't echo. But things are moving along, and Breaking News Bible Study is the first ministry of First Century Bible Church, which, as you know, if you watch these videos in a series, I launched that by declaration a couple of weeks ago to be a non-501c3, non-corporate form and style church, to pursue a form of Christian fellowship and worship that's much more like the home church model of the first century believers, using technology, modern technology, to assist in that, and studying the scriptures from the perspective of the apostles. And I have books that reflect my conclusions from scholarship. I hold a THD, Doctor of Theology. I also hold a Juris Doctor degree from Trinity Law School. It's a Bible-based law program. And so I've studied all these things myself. I follow my own scholarship. I look at what other people have had to say, but it's primarily focused on the Bible. In any case, we launched the show on Sunday. It's going to happen every Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern on WETR, and we'll stream live on Facebook and YouTube and other platforms as we proceed. Today is Tuesday, and so my weekly column is running on WorldNet Daily, and I want to read that to you and make a couple of comments about it. So we have a video version of that also. And so this week's theme on WorldNet Daily is why the leftist media is our worst enemy. Oh, there's Thunderbird. Do it again, Thunderbird. No. He will. He will, right when there we go. Oh, he's fun. He attacks me whenever I'm not looking now, if I'm anywhere near the hens. But he's a fun rooster to have around. Anyway, why the leftist media is our worst enemy. If war is politics by other means, then politics is war by regular means. And in both, strategy is everything. For a couple of years, I've been reading through Bernard Cornwell's very well-written Richard Sharp series, historical fiction about the British war with Napoleon. Now, I'm not happy about the character Richard Sharp's sort of negative attitude toward Christianity, so be forewarned if you're going to watch that. But, hey, being in the world and not of the world means you have to be able to look at the things of the world and be able to sort the good from the bad. Anyway, let me go back here. Let's see, I'll read the last sentence. For a couple of years, I've been reading through Bernard Cornwell's very well-written Richard Sharp series, historical fiction about the British war with Napoleon. War tactics were very formulaic then. For example, if the assaulting infantry was going up against artillery, then they would advance in a long line, but against cavalry, the troops would form a square, like a Roman square, and so that they're packed tight together and they could deal with the very fast-moving troops on horseback. Both responses were to survive counterattacks to one's offense, minimizing the inevitable casualties. Right? This is the war analogy that we're using in this. I think it's most appropriate. I also confess a fondness for the real-time strategy computer game StarCraft, which I discovered was an excellent diversion from the intense intellectual rigors of law school years ago. I was surprised to find that it improved my analytical skills, realizing in retrospect that behind the colorful graphics and entertaining sci-fi storyline, StarCraft was all mathematics, specifically the mathematics of strategy and logistics. The game literally improved my mind just by playing it, which is by no means an endorsement of all video games. I raise these things to set the context for defending President Trump in the, quote, game of political warfare with the deep state. I'm defending him against fellow constitutionalists and conservatives whose ideological approach to the culture war is not balanced with sufficient respect for the realities of what we call realpolitik. It's the old contest of purity versus pragmatism that continually rages on both ends of the left-right political spectrum. It's the reason why secular immigration policy purists like Ann Coulter and Matt Drudge turned against the president when he couldn't close the border to illegals as quickly as they'd hoped. Having run for governor of Massachusetts, I have personal experience with the challenge of juggling multiple issues in a way that satisfies multiple constituencies, each with varying degrees of tolerance for anything less than perfect purity in support of their own policy priorities. I lean to the side of purity of principles myself, but I also understand that politics is by definition the realm of compromise, and you can't be a purist on everything or you'll never be able to assemble a voting majority in an election and expect to win. The issue that defined my ministry for a quarter century was the LGBT agenda. I have a much broader platform now, but in my view still, openly pandering to, quote, conservative homosexuals is President Trump's greatest error. But I also know that if he were to take as firm a position against the LGBT agenda as I have, he would stir up the millennial generation's army of social justice warriors who have been brainwashed and conditioned since preschool to view homophobia, quote-unquote homophobia, as the greatest of all possible social evils. I think Trump's strategy is to play both sides and let the sleeping SJW dogs lie, expecting, or maybe just hoping, that many will just simply stay home to smoke weed on Election Day. I think that's actually a reasonable expectation. And from a realpolitik perspective, I think he believes that the evangelical half of his political base would not be able to effectively defend him on the gay rights issue. Although I think that's a wrong conclusion because it was corrupt Supreme Court Justice, the swing vote, Anthony Kennedy, who defeated us, not a popular majority of citizens. But in any case, in the Trump household, there's the added problem of Ivanka's pro-LGBT zealotry. Bizarre in a convert to Orthodox Judaism, to say the least. But a virtual statistical certainty for a child raised in a secular home in New York City in the Bush-Clinton-Bush-Obama time period. So I see Trump's stand as a glass half full, from my view, and I believe that as biblical values go, he's a work in progress, trending slowly in the right direction, and I urge prayer for Ivanka to become pro-family. And I apologize for any wind noise that you're getting now, because I'm doing this out in the open air. There are potentially new political defections coming over the $2 trillion stimulus bill, and that's where I want to bring another dimension of strategic analysis into focus. That's the globalist advantage in air power, the leftist corporate media, and why it was necessary for President Trump to propose the bailout himself. The problem with the media is not the lack of alternate voices. Rush Limbaugh alone counterbalances a big part of the left. The problem is that the legacy media, which influences the 60% of the mushy middle between the 20% of the ideologues on either end of the political spectrum, that legacy media is entirely owned by the center left, who have now extended their controlling ownership into the social media industry. They are, unfortunately, the heirs of the, quote, Walter Cronkite trustworthiness, end quote, in the minds of the non-ideological middle. And that's often the key to close elections. In the same way that tradition alone dictates voting Democrat for many American families, unquestioned tradition allows the legacy media to largely define reality for the 60%. Trump is the first president to declare the media enemies of the people because he knows their power must be broken to stop our leftward slide. Soft and civil Reagan-esque chiding of the media for quote-unquote a liberal bias is not enough. They need to be shamed publicly to awaken their customers, their consumers, to the severity of the problem. And that strategy was working until the globalist counteroffensive called COVID-19, a worldwide scorched earth defense to stop Trump's army of patriotic populists in their tracks. In the military terms I've set in this essay, it was a disease-bearing cavalry charge to push the infantry into a defensive square, and then an immediate massive artillery bombardment of the square. And overarching the battlefield in an all-in media air campaign to terrify the entire population into panicked stampede to speed the collapse of the civilian infrastructure and destroy our supply lines. That's why the media is our worst enemy. When fighting a war, a general must adapt to actual conditions. The plan is great, but once the fighting starts, everything changes because it's dynamic. So a general must adapt to actual conditions, and that is what our commander-in-chief has done. If he were merely to argue for calm and patience to the panic-stricken 60%, who are envisioning breadlines and homelessness as the media intended, he would seem impotent and their anxiety would grow. But instead, he offered immediate, tangible reassurance to the 60% that he would take care of them. It worked, and the elites were thwarted once again. Now, was the cause of constitutionalism harmed by such a vast increase of debt? Sadly, yes, of course. Is this proof that Trump is part of the globalist plan? Ridiculous. He was essentially forced into making that move because of the actual circumstances on the ground. Harm in war is inevitable, and any tactic that keeps an advancing army on the field is, on balance, a good one. So, anyway, I don't like the $2+ trillion bailout any more than anybody else does, but I know that it's going to do less harm to us than simply letting the globalists collapse the economy, and which would put us into serfdom almost certainly. And that's where we are now. That's my commentary for today. God bless you, and I'll talk to you next time.